right, we're going to bring in Tom Murphy, and as we bring in Tom, I hate to do this to you, but I kind of want to.
He don't really hate it.
I don't hate it. I gotta tell you what Charles Barkley said about your Falcons on Sunday.
What on earth is so urgent that you have to raise your hand?
Am I camera 4?
Oh, jeez.
I just want to say something, America. Y'all know I love football. It's my favorite sport.
Okay.
And let me tell you something. I lost for a fortune on the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowls when they choked. But let me tell you something. They outdid themselves today. That was the biggest choke job what the Atlanta Falcons did today. I'm not giving the Dallas Cowboys.
It's only week 2.
That was a choke.
What about the Cowboys? Stop it, man.
Tom, did you break your TV after watching that game? Just be honest with us, man.
I'll be totally honest with you. I tweeted out what I was doing. I was watching golf. I was on a text thread with some people, and somebody tweeted, "Oh, my God." And I had a good feeling what it probably was, or I guess a bad feeling. But, by the way, it is a pleasure to be here this week, today, talking football with you guys. It is a pleasure. We all love football, and we're playing football. When you have suffered the worst possible loss that can be inflicted upon a football team, then something like this, yeah, I've had nightmares about it the last couple of days, but you're conditioned, and so I had a bad feeling, and so I didn't watch the end of it. But I've seen the highlights.
Tom, I was thinking about this yesterday when the Sam Pittman had his press conference. Now, we're not in person. We're not doing these press conferences, but they're via Zoom. I can only imagine what Dudley Dawson would have said to you in person if you guys had met yesterday. I don't know if I missed the press conference yesterday, so I don't know if that was a conversation that you guys had over Zoom, but I know he was probably very ecstatic while you were very deflated after that game.
Well, we actually had a very brief conversation about it before the Sam Pittman Zoom. His wife, Petra, is a Falcons fan.
Oh, okay.
And so they sat and watched it together, and Dudley could not be elated out loud. He had to be like, hey, man, fall on an onside kick. Before it gets 10 yards, there's nothing stopping you from just dropping your body on the ball to win the game. Mm-hmm. A rolling ball, you fall on it to win the game, and we failed to do that. It hurts.
Yeah.
Unless it squirts out from underneath you.
By the way, I never saw clear and concise evidence that the Cowboys were on that ball, but whatever.
All right, I'll end your agony here. You're talking about the positives. Well, the positive this week, Tom, is we get to watch Arkansas football. You get to cover Arkansas football. Really excited about that. Georgia, 3 o'clock on the SEC Network, as well as these stations here. You got the press conference yesterday, you got the depth chart yesterday. I know you're itching, as well as some of the other Arkansas media members, to see that. What stood out to you the most on the Arkansas depth chart release from Monday, Tom?
Oh, gosh, what stood out the most? Let's see. Well, nothing blew me away. I mean, Hudson, Henry, and Blaine Toll at the top of the tight end chart was something, because Blake Kern had been, near the very top, and I'm sure that he's going to get some run in Saturday's game. Let's see, defensive tackle. We had thought Isaiah Nichols might have squeezed his way past Xavier Kelly, and I do think we're going to see both those guys at tackle. I think what is really cool is it would have behooved this Arkansas staff to develop depth and be able to run more guys out there this year, but COVID-19 made it like an imperative. You have to be able to go to your third linebacker, your fourth, fifth linebacker, and they might get up to 6. So they didn't list strong side linebacker. So Hayden Henry was listed as the third team Mike. And we get the feeling that they're going to play that position some. I'll tell you what's going to be one of the most intriguing parts of watching Saturday's game is going to be what alignments and what kind of, we won't know the different coverages, all the different coverages Barry Odom is running, but they've studied this long enough that perhaps, they can give the Georgia quarterback a little bit of pause on changing coverages, changing the rotations and who's playing what position and stuff. because they had so long to work on it, and they like all their safeties. So we're probably going to get a good a view of how multiple Arkansas tries to be on defense.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how much three down linemen, 4 down linemen, how much they walk somebody up, how much disguise, how much chess game they try to play. This isn't a non-conference game where you're trying to be vanilla and not show much. Now, maybe Georgia's taking that approach a little bit more, but Arkansas doesn't have that luxury like you would early in a season where you're playing, Northwestern State from somewhere. You're going to put a lot of your playbook out there on both sides of the ball.
Oh yeah, this is a different year for that for sure. And you're right. I mean, and Georgia on the defensive side. I mean, this team, they led the country in points per game allowed, and that's a rushing defense. So they're going to be a tough nut to crack, and they bring so many guys back from it. But yeah, you got to try to be somewhat in mid-season form when none of these teams have been on the field in live game action in so long.
Yeah.
And I do want to ask Sam Pittman later in the week because Kirby Smart had been asked, had they shown their team some of the flubs and mistakes that teams have made in the early going? Because we've seen a lot of weird stuff, a lot of special teams things. And Kirby Smart said, yeah, I think they like watching that kind of stuff better than they watch our practice film. So yeah. I bet Sam Pittman and his staff have done it too.
Tom, what'd you make of when you were perusing over the depth chart for the first time and you came to defensive tackle and you saw Xavier Kelly or Isaiah Nichols, a redshirt senior and a redshirt freshman, seemed to be locked up in a battle there for that inside job on the defensive line?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Well, we saw Nichols, who's a redshirt sophomore. We saw him running ones several, I want to say during parts of 2 different weeks. So he's made a play, and he's a bigger guy now. And what they say about him is just consistent. You get the same guy all the time, and they like that stuff. So him pushing Kelly is a good thing, and possibly they get some depth in there because those two and John Marshall are the kind of the guys who have some experience. And then behind that, you got your Marcus Millers and your Torian Carters, who are redshirt freshmen who haven't played as much. So hopefully those guys are going to be ready for prime time, and they can tap into some depth there a little bit.
Tom, I know you were listening to Kirby Smart's press conference yesterday and kind of the stuff he said about Sam Pittman, not only as a head coach, but what he did for Georgia while he was there. How much do you think that Sam Pittman is going to take away from what he learned from Kirby Smart? We've talked about the recruiting aspect. He's mentioned that time and time again. But just as a game preparation, just in the gamemanship, just everything leading up to Georgia, how much do you think we're going to see a little bit of Kirby Smart in Sam Pittman on Saturday and just leading up to it?
Oh, yeah. There's no question that some of the things that Kirby Smart did, particularly in the recruiting, which he's mentioned many times over, but I don't know if you can quantify all the different ways we might see Kirby Smart's influence on the way Sam Pittman coaches. But I will say, the way you practice, maybe the way sometimes you address your team. The thing that Sam Pittman has, and I almost think that there's a bit of somewhat a bit of envy among other coaches, is the true relationships that he builds with the players. He just has a natural way about him that players gravitate toward it. He's got a really cool sense of humor, and the players love that. And I think he attracted some coaches here because of that too. Because sometimes the highest level of college football coaching is a intense deal, and I think you got to have tough skin. And I think sometimes Nick Saban, the way he treats his assistant coaches, sometimes rubs guys the wrong way. You could tell that him and Dan Enos were oil and water, man, and Enos had to get out of there. And so I think Sam is going to be a guy who attracts assistant coaches who want to come play in this atmosphere. The one thing that, we might not be totally privy to it, but they keep preaching, the coaching staff keeps preaching, how are we going to react when we get punched in the mouth? Okay. Somebody from Georgia catches a screen and runs it for a touchdown. Okay. What are we going to do? Well, I want to know how the coaching staff is going to react if they're going to be the same guys if you lose a couple of games and then, the atmosphere around the program's a little bit more gloomy, are they going to keep up the positivity and that we're staying on track to get better? Because that's going to be key for Sam Pittman to build this program back up, is for the coaching staff to continue to enforce that positivity.
Tom, you mentioned attracting assistant coaches. One of the biggest hires of the offseason was Scott Fountain, the former special teams coordinator at Georgia, now at Arkansas. I know Scott Cochran, former Alabama strength and conditioning guy, is now taking over that position at Georgia, never been on the field before. Is that going to be an area they're not going to win on defense. They're probably not going to win on offense. Could special teams be an area where Arkansas keeps this game close on Saturday?
Well, I do think that there's a chance they can be I think there'll be a stronger special teams unit just because of the dedicated coach. And I'm talking more about coverage teams, getting a few more yards on returns because you're more in tune with blocking people and not having penalties and stuff. There's not much of a way they can be a better field goal team because Connor Limpert was really, really good. Mm-hmm. But they can be a better punt team. And just if you improve your net punting by 4 or 5 yards, which Arkansas really needs to, that makes you a better team. So, yes, long answer short, I think they have a chance to make special teams an impact in this game, and Scott Fountain's a plus.
I think just A.J. Reed consistently getting the ball into and out of the end zone on kickoffs, you just take away the opportunity for return for opponents, and starting with Georgia. So just that little detail takes away one opportunity for your opponent to score.
Absolutely, Tommy. I failed to mention that. But, Arkansas 2 years ago was a very, very bad touchback kickoff team. And last year they were right around 50%. You got to be better. And Scott Fountain rattled off these numbers with Rodrigo Blankenship where he had gotten into the high 80s on touchback percentage. And, yes, makes a huge difference.
All right. So, back to what we've been talking about for months, and that's been the quarterback spot. No surprise there with Felipe Franks, the starter. What do we need to see in game one from this offense with him at the helm? What is he going to be the star of the show? Is it going to be Burks and one of these wide receivers, Knox or Woods, or is it going to be Rakeem Boyd or more of a collective effort? Who will we be talking about on Saturday night offensively?
Well, the stars of the show need to be the cast. Okay, so it starts with the front. We think they're going to be a little bit better. We'll see about that. But Felipe having that in sync with his receivers. If you see this coverage, this is our route. This is our adjustment. If they can read that, okay, I'm going to throw a back shoulder on this because the cornerback is playing my guy in this fashion. He's playing inside shoulder, so we're going to do a back shoulder throw. Or this is going to be an in-breaking route because the cornerback is lined up like this. They've got to be on that page. And balancing all that out has to be some semblance of a run game. And that's where opening with Georgia is going to be really tough for Arkansas. They allowed 70-something running yards per game last year, just a phenomenal number. And Arkansas was around 140. So if they can convert on third and shorts with the run game, if they can run on passing downs and just keep things mixed up, let all your stars shine. Let Traylon Burks catch some ISO passes where you just jam it in there with the receiver, with the DB on his back. I think that if the receivers make a big step forward this year, then you're going to see the stars, so to speak, spread out over the offense. And I think Felipe Franks understands he just needs to be a good distributor, and he needs to use his legs on occasion to keep the Bulldogs on.
Mm-hmm. All right, last one. We'll let you go. Everyone on this 2 deep, in some cases 3 deep, you expect them all to be available on Saturday?
Yeah, that's a great question. The odds are against it simply because of, there may be some injuries that we don't even know about, y'all, in addition to potential COVID stuff. So, we're going to find out on Saturday how complete that 2 and 3 deep is. And I tell you, teams across the country are going to need it. We've already seen that.
No question. Tom, appreciate it as always, man. We'll talk on Thursday as we are 4 days out from Arkansas football.
Yeah, no Falcons talk on Thursday. Probably is a pretty good likelihood there.
I think that's a fair estimate.
We will not bring the salt shaker for the wound. So.
I'll tell you this though, it was very nice to see the Raiders beat the Saints last night. So even despite the fact that we've scored a ton of points and we're 0-2, we're only one game off the lead in our division. That's doable.
It's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
See y'all.
All right, later, buddy. So good talk with Tom as always.